Ruth Buzzy, best known for her role as the hilariously cranky Gladys Ormsby on Laugh-In, had a knack for delivering side-splitting comedy with a deadly handbag swing. Short in both stature and patience, she could cut celebrities down to size with a single glare, or a well-timed smack. Even Hollywood heavyweights like Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra found themselves at the mercy of her comedic wrath, often left paralyzed by laughter. Despite her undeniable genius, there was one scene in Laugh-In that led to her being blacklisted from the industry. Was it an unscripted moment that ruffled the wrong feathers? A joke that hit too close to home? Join us as we get into all the details. Ruth Buzzy before The Laugh-In Show. While Laugh-In was known for pushing boundaries with its quick-witted humor and risque sketches, one particular bit crossed the line. But whatever happened, it changed the path of Ruth Buzzy's career forever. But before she became the handbag-wielding force of comedy as Gladys Ormsby, who was Ruth Buzzy? Let's rewind to where it all began. Born on July 24, 1936, at Westerly Hospital in Rhode Island, Ruth was raised in Connecticut, where her creativity first took shape. As a child, she studied voice, dance, and acting, showing early signs of the comedic brilliance that would one day make her a household name. But Buzzy was no stranger to practicality. She also trained in cosmetology, just in case the acting dream didn't pan out. Determined to make it in show business, she packed her bags at 17 and headed west to the Pasadena Playhouse for the performing arts. It was there, among future Hollywood icons like Dustin Hoffman and Gene Hackman, that Buzzy sharpened her craft, graduating with honors and stepping onto a path that would soon lead to television history. After graduating with honors from the Pasadena Playhouse, Ruth Buzzy set her sights on the bright lights of New York, and it didn't take long for her talent to shine. She was immediately hired for an off-Broadway musical revue. During this time, she found herself working alongside some of the biggest names in entertainment, including Barbra Streisand, Joan Rivers, and Carol Burnett. Her first national exposure came when she teamed up with Dom DeLuise in a wildly funny magic act. DeLuise played an incompetent magician, while Ruth stole the show as his bewildered yet ever-loyal assistant, Shakuntala. That performance was a turning point. Buzzy's comedy career was officially taking off. From there, she became a familiar face on television, appearing on The Steve Allen Show, The Gary Moore Show, The Entertainers, and Even That Girl, where she played Marlo Thomas's friend. But her biggest break was just around the corner. When NBC launched Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, Ruth Buzzy became an instant favorite. In fact, she was the only featured player to appear in every single episode, including the show's pilot. Her knack for creating unforgettable characters made her a standout. Among her many personas were Busy Buzzy, a Hollywood gossip queen, and Doris Sidebottom, a cocktail lounge patron who never quite knew when to stop drinking, especially when paired with her on-screen husband, Leonard, played by Dick Martin. Buzzy thrived in a range of roles, playing everything from eccentric Southern belles to flashy hookers, always bringing her wit and impeccable comedic timing. But no character was more beloved than Gladys Ormsby. Dressed in drab brown clothing with her signature hairnet tied smack in the middle of her forehead, Gladys was the ultimate spinster, grumpy, sharp-tongued, and always ready to unleash her purse on anyone who crossed her. Whether scolding unwanted suitors or smacking celebrities into submission, Gladys had audiences howling with laughter. Now that was comedy. Effortless, timeless, and downright hilarious. On Laugh-In, Ruth Buzzy's Gladys Ormsby was often the unfortunate target of Tyrone F. Horney, the lecherous, dirty old man played by Artie Johnson. With his slow, sleazy delivery and desperate advances, Tyrone never learned his lesson, no matter how many times Gladys clobbered him with her purse. Even Dean Martin himself, a man who worked with the greatest comedic talents of his time, once called Buzzy the funniest woman he had ever worked with. And he wasn't wrong. Watching Gladys go after Dean Martin, sometimes swinging that legendary handbag at him, other times putting him in his place with a single glare, was comedy gold. Whether Martin was genuinely amused or just tipsy, as he often was during the roasts, only added to the hilarity. Her ability to keep the audience and Martin himself on their toes made every moment unforgettable. After Laugh-In and her legendary Dean Martin roast appearances, Ruth Buzzy's career continued to flourish. She became a familiar face on beloved TV shows like Sesame Street, The Muppet Show, and Saved by the Bell. On the big screen, she landed roles in more than 20 movies, including Freaky Friday and The Apple Dumpling Gang Rides Again. She even took on westerns in the European Lucky Luke series, proving her versatility across genres. With a career spanning decades, Ruth Buzzy earned numerous accolades, including the coveted Golden Globe Award for her work on Laugh-In. Whether on television, film, or the Vegas stage, she left audiences in stitches, one purse swing at a time. But while Buzzy had already built an impressive resume, there is one show that truly made her a Hollywood legend. The show that made Ruth Buzzy. Laugh-In was a sensation when it premiered on NBC in 1968, and its success carried well into the 1970s. At a time when the country was deeply divided over the Vietnam War, the show became one of the few things that Americans could agree on. It was fast, funny, and unlike anything else on television at the time. The mastermind behind Laugh-In was George Schlatter, a visionary producer who had already made a name for himself with numerous TV specials. He later went on to create Real People, one of the earliest reality television shows, but Laugh-In remained his crowning achievement. Schlatter recalled how his journey into television was anything but conventional. At a young age, I worked in the mailroom at MCA and moved up to booking piano players, he said. From there, I got into nightclubs, then into Las Vegas, and eventually into television. But all of that was fraught with accidents, adventures, and so forth. It all came to a head when we finally convinced them to let us try Laugh-In. And that was my favorite. When NBC greenlit Laugh-In, it wasn't because they had high hopes for it. It was because they had nothing else to air opposite Lucille Ball and Gunsmoke. But against all odds, the show exploded in popularity, redefining comedy with its rapid-fire sketches, political satire, and unforgettable characters. And at the heart of it all was Ruth Buzzy, whose comedic genius helped make Laugh-In a cultural phenomenon. NBC initially treated Laugh-In as little more than a throwaway, something to fill a time slot against Lucille Ball and Gunsmoke. But after just a few weeks, the ratings told a different story. Wait a minute, what's happening here? Network executives wondered as the show gained ratings. Before long, Laugh-In wasn't just surviving, it was dominating, quickly becoming the most popular show in America. A big reason for its success was its fearless rapid-fire approach to comedy. The show had a distinct 60s look and counterculture energy, but it didn't alienate older audiences either. Instead, it brought in legendary entertainers like Jack Benny and John Wayne, sometimes with a surprising twist. When we asked John Wayne to do the show, he said, "I told you I'm not going to go on that show," recalled George Schlatter. Rather than argue, the producers simply taped him saying it, and that's exactly what they aired. The guest list didn't stop at A-list Hollywood royalty. Laugh-In even welcomed political figures like Senator Barry Goldwater, who famously quipped, "America is a great country where any boy can grow up to be president. Any boy but me." It was a sharp line, but surprisingly, some viewers didn't even recognize him. That was the magic of Laugh-In. It blurred the lines between entertainment, politics, and pop culture, making even the most unexpected guests part of the joke. Hosted by Dan Rowan and Dick Martin, Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In ran for 6 seasons from January 22, 1968 to March 12, 1973. What started as a one-time special in September 1967, replacing The Man from UNCLE, on NBC's Monday night lineup, became a cultural phenomenon. The show's title was a clever nod to the era's counterculture movements, playing off the love-ins and be-ins of the 1960s. In the very first episode, Dan Rowan set the stage for what Laugh-In would become. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to television's first Laugh-In. Now, for the past few years, we have all been hearing an awful lot about the various ins. There have been be-ins, love-ins, and sleep-ins. This is a laugh-in, and a laugh-in is a frame of mind. For the next hour, we would just like you to sit back and laugh and forget about the other ins. And that's exactly what America did. Laugh-In may have seemed wild and unpredictable, but it was built on classic comedy traditions. It took inspiration from vaudeville, burlesque, and the chaotic Broadway show Hell's a Poppin', as well as the clever TV humor of Ernie Kovacs, and That Was the Week That Was. The show moved at a fast pace, with short, sharp sketches, political jokes, and clever wordplay. Dan Rowan and Dick Martin, the hosts, played off each other perfectly, Rowan as the serious one, and Martin as the clueless, funny man. Their chemistry kept the show balanced amid all the craziness. Gary Owens was the show's announcer, using his deep voice and serious tone to make silly lines sound even funnier. The cast was packed with comedy stars, including Ruth Buzzi, Judy Carn, Henry Gibson, Goldie Hawn, Artie Johnson, Joanne Worley, Alan Suze, Lily Tomlin, Dennis Allen, and Richard Dawson. The show's success. By 2002, Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In was ranked 42nd on TV Guide's list of the 50 greatest TV shows of all time. One reason for its success was its unique, free-flowing format. Some jokes were repeated throughout an episode with small changes, while others featured regular characters that viewers came to love. The show's famous Blackout sketches were quick, surprising jokes, often set to a short musical sting. These kept the energy high and made every episode feel exciting and unpredictable. Each episode started with fast-paced jokes, leading into Gary Owens' introduction. The cast and guest stars would appear behind the brightly painted joke wall, delivering punchlines in quick succession. Owens, always standing at his microphone with one hand cupped to his ear, gave the show a signature sound with his deadpan announcements. With its mix of slapstick, satire, and pure silliness, Laugh-In didn't just entertain, it changed comedy on television forever. After a few more quick sketches leading up to the first commercial break, Rowan and Martin would take the stage to introduce the show. Their back and forth usually had Martin misunderstanding or going off on a tangent, much to Rowan's frustration. From there, Rowan would invite everyone to the cocktail party. This was a lively segment where the cast and sometimes surprise celebrity guests danced in a colorful party setting while tossing out quick one-liners between bursts of music. It had the loose, playful feel of a real party, and the unpredictability made it even funnier. Another popular segment was Laugh-In Looks at the News, which always started with the female cast, and the guest star singing a themed opening. The news skits jumped between different time periods, with Martin covering current events, Rowan predicting the future, and the cast acting out historical moments. Alan Suze, as Big Al, would chime in with an over-the-top sports report that never made much sense. Then there was Maude World, which took on a different theme each week with a mix of sketches, musical numbers, and a bit of visual flair. One of the most memorable parts was the go-go dancing clips, often featuring Judy Carn and Goldie Hawn in bikinis with jokes or images painted onto their bodies. It all added to the show's fast-paced, anything-goes energy. At the end of every show, after a final exchange, Rowan would turn to Martin and say goodnight, Dick." Martin would always respond, "Good night, Dick." That led straight into the final joke wall segment, where cast members popped out of their doors to tell one last joke, talk to each other, or just shout, "Good night, Dick." As the closing credits rolled, there was still time for a few more quick skits, with Gary Owens making one last appearance. For the first 4 seasons, the show always ended with Artie Johnson's German soldier character, Wolfgang, slowly rising from behind some plants, looking into the camera, and saying in his thick accent, "Very interesting." But that wasn't quite the end. The credits would finish rolling, and then a single pair of hands would clap several seconds later. An oddly quiet but memorable final touch. For the 6th and final season, instead of the lone clap, the last thing viewers heard was Ruth Buzzy's strange, drawn-out laugh, echoing long after the show had ended. Throughout the years, different segments and characters came and went, but Laugh-In always kept its fast-paced, unpredictable energy. The September 9th, 1967 special was originally intended as a one-time event, sponsored by Timex. It featured guest stars Pamela Austin, Ken Berry, Judy Carn, and Barbara Feldon, along with an ensemble that included Ruth Buzzy, Henry Gibson, Larry Hovis, Artie Johnson, Monty Landis, Joanne Worley, and Paul Weston and his orchestra. Following its success, Laugh-In launched its first full season in January 1968, running for 14 episodes through April. Gary Owens joined the cast in the first episode, alongside series regulars Pamela Austin, Eileen Brennan, Judy Carn, Ruth Buzzy, Henry Gibson, Larry Hovis, Artie Johnson, and Joanne Worley. Goldie Hawn became a regular by the 3rd episode, despite being under contract with Good Morning World at the time of the pilot. Eileen Brennan, Barbara Feldon, and Jack Riley were also frequent faces in both the first and second seasons, with Riley often appearing in sketches as President Lyndon Johnson. The show's musical direction was handled by Ian Bernard, who composed the theme song and many other pieces throughout all 6 seasons. Billy Barnes also contributed original comedic and topical songs, often playing a golden grand piano to accompany performances by cast members like Ruth Buzzy, Alan Suze, and Joanne Worley, as well as guest stars like Dinah Shore and Lena Horne. Artie Johnson, wanting separate star billing, had his name announced separately by Gary Owens, starring Dan Rowan and Dick Martin, and Artie Johnson, with Ruth Buzzy. This gave him the distinction he wanted while keeping him part of the ensemble. By the end of the season, Chelsea Brown and Dave Madden had left. Judy Carn also officially departed after episode 11, but made a few guest appearances in season 3. Season 3 introduced new regulars like Johnny Brown, Byron Gilliam, Teresa Graves, Jeremy Lloyd, Pamela Rogers, and Lily Tomlin. Gilliam, previously a dancer in the cocktail party scenes, was promoted to cast member. Brown and Tomlin joined later in the season. After the season finale, Gilliam returned to his dancer role and stayed until the show ended. Graves, Hawn, Lloyd, and Worley all left, while Tomlin remained until the series' final season in 1973. By the time Laugh-In entered its 4th season, it was no longer just the zany countercultural experiment that had exploded onto television. It was now a full-fledged phenomenon, but like any long-running act, it needed to keep evolving. Gone were the psychedelic set designs and the freewheeling hippie-style comedy. In their place, a new avant-garde aesthetic took over, complete with oversized cutouts of famous figures staring blankly from the cocktail party scene. The humor shifted, too. There were fewer jabs at the Vietnam War, and racial jokes were noticeably scaled back. Laugh-In was still irreverent, still fast-paced, but now it was finding a new identity. Some familiar faces returned. Goldie Hawn, the show's original giggling blonde, popped in for episode 3 after leaving Laugh-In to chase Hollywood dreams. It was a triumphant homecoming, considering she had just won an Academy Award for Cactus Flower. Teresa Graves also made a brief return toward the end of the season. But not everyone stuck around. By episode 10, Henry Gibson had bowed out, and Artie Johnson followed after the season finale, ending his run as the ever-watchful German soldier who always found things very interesting. Season 5 arrived with yet another set redesign, and this time it was almost self-referential. The cocktail party scene now unfolded in front of a giant mirrored wall, reflecting the cast and audience in a way that made the show feel even more like an absurd, never-ending funhouse. Meanwhile, the comedy took a noticeable turn. Less politically charged, more vaudevillian. There were still jokes, of course, but they were lighter, broader, and, for the first time, occasionally came with a lesson. Midway through the season, Laugh-In started airing brief anti-drug messages at the end of each episode. Short, fast-paced clips that wouldn't look out of place in a 21st century GIF. The cast saw an influx of new talent, including Hogan's Heroes veterans Richard Dawson and Larry Hovis. It was a return for both, as they had been part of Laugh-In's first season. The Richard Dawson controversy. The success of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In didn't just boost Richard Dawson's career, it set the stage for his next big break, a role that would make him even more unforgettable. Enter Family Feud, the game show that debuted on ABC in 1976 and quickly became a cultural phenomenon. Dawson stepped into the role of host with his charm and wit, turning the show into the top-rated daytime program in the United States during his run from 1976 to 1985, pers the Globe and Mail. But while Dawson's charisma shone brightly, it wasn't all smooth sailing. One of his most talked-about habits sparked both admiration and controversy: his penchant for kissing female contestants. Dawson's kisses became so iconic that he earned the nickname the Kissing Bandit. According to Dawson himself, the whole thing started innocently enough. He once kissed a nervous contestant who couldn't think of a green vegetable, saying, "I'm going to do something that my mom would do to me whenever I had a problem of any kind." He planted a peck on her cheek, added, "That's for luck," and lo and behold, she blurted out, "Asparagus?" The team went on to win, and the kiss became a recurring bit. What began as a simple gesture soon turned into a full-blown trademark of his hosting style. But not everyone was charmed by Dawson's smooches. While some viewers found them cute, others weren't so amused. Critics argued that the kisses were unnecessary, even inappropriate, especially as societal attitudes toward consent and gender dynamics began to evolve. Decades later, the debate gained new fuel thanks to revelations about what went on behind the scenes of Family Feud. In the book, Outrageous, A History of Showbiz and the Culture Wars, author Cliff Nesteroff claimed that contestants were subjected to mandatory mouth inspections with a magnifying glass by medical staff, reportedly a precaution tied directly to Dawson's habit of kissing them. These claims caused discussions about how such behavior was perceived at the time. As Nesteroff told People in November 2023, when you watch clips of that era of Family Feud on YouTube and you see Richard Dawson kissing the ladies, a lot of the comments in the comment section will say things like, "Well, it was a different time. That's the way men were back then." And here, again, is evidence to the contrary that all kinds of people were complaining. While Dawson's kisses may have seemed playful and harmless to some, it was harmful to others. The Ruth Buzzi controversy, another Laugh-In star who found herself at the center of some unexpected drama, was none other than Ruth Buzzy, the comedic genius behind the cranky and unforgettable character Gladys Ormsby. Known for her impeccable timing and hilarious portrayals, Buzzy's life took a concerning turn in July 2022, when news surfaced that she had suffered a series of strokes. Fans were understandably worried, but what followed was even more alarming and downright frustrating for the actress. As word of her health struggles spread, misinformation began to circulate online. Videos emerged claiming that Buzzy had passed away, leaving her fans devastated, but the actress, ever the fighter, wasn't about to let these false reports go unchallenged. In a statement addressing the rumors, Buzzy angrily called out the culprits, saying, "Some pathetic sick person on YouTube was making money posting false, distressing news, saying I died." Her frustration was palpable, and it shed light on the darker side of internet culture, where misinformation can spread like wildfire, often with little regard for the impact on those involved. Thankfully, Buzzy's husband, Kent Perkins, stepped in to reassure her devoted fan base. In a heartfelt Facebook update, he shared promising news about her recovery. She was able to move a leg that had been totally crippled with stricture from a stroke for the past few weeks, he revealed. Despite the challenges she faced, Perkins emphasized that her spirit remained as strong as ever, noting, "She still has her same old, wonderful, award-winning sense of humor." As messages of love poured in, Perkins thanked her fans for their unwavering support. "Thank you for your prayers, thoughts, lovely shared memories, and comforting messages," he wrote. He encouraged those who had met Buzzy to share photos, noting that she was enjoying looking at them. Buzzy had long since settled into a quieter life in North Texas, away from the Hollywood limelight. She and Perkins moved from Southlake to a sprawling 629-acre ranch in Erath County near Stephenville, Texas. Their home, a stunning 9,800-square-foot plantation-style estate, was built by the same architect who had designed their previous residence in Southlake. Even in her later years, Buzzy remained deeply connected to charitable causes, lending her name to events and fundraisers. She served as honorary chairwoman for the 2010 Cabaret Gala benefiting the Dallas Children's Theater, graced the red carpet at the 2013 Lone Star Film Festival Ball, and received the Topaz Award from the Dallas chapter of Women in Film in 2014, their highest honor. Through it all, her wit never faded. Her Twitter feed, usually filled with classic one-liners, took on a more sentimental tone on a Monday morning when she posted, "Thank you for your love and friendship for all these years." A simple yet powerful message that struck a chord with her longtime fans. Ruth Buzzy's career may have ended, but her influence is forever. Whether it was her razor-sharp comedic timing, her iconic laugh-in characters, or her warm and generous spirit, she left her mark on entertainment. Where is Ruth Buzzy now? After decades of making audiences laugh, Ruth Buzzy bid farewell to show business in the most modern way possible through social media. In 2021, at the age of 85, she officially announced her retirement, signaling the end of a career that spanned television, film, and stage. But even in retirement, she never stopped making an impact. Then, in July 2022, news surfaced that Buzzy had suffered a series of strokes. Fans held their breath, but her husband, Kent Perkins, quickly reassured them with an update on Facebook. He shared that she was showing signs of improvement, revealing she was able to move a leg that had been totally crippled with stricture from a stroke for the past few weeks. He also emphasized that her spirit remained unshaken, adding that she still had her same old wonderful award-winning sense of humor. As messages of love poured in, Perkins thanked her fans for their unwavering support. "Thank you for your prayers, thoughts, lovely shared memories, and comforting messages," he wrote. He encouraged those who had met Buzzy to share photos, noting that she was enjoying looking at them. Buzzy had long since settled into a quieter life in North Texas, away from the Hollywood limelight. She and Perkins moved from Southlake to a sprawling 629-acre ranch in Erath County near Stephenville, Texas. Their home, a stunning 9,800-square-foot plantation-style estate, was built by the same architect who had designed their previous residence in Southlake. Even in her later years, Buzzy remained deeply connected to charitable causes, lending her name to events and fundraisers. She served as honorary chairwoman for the 2010 Cabaret Gala benefiting the Dallas Children's Theater, graced the red carpet at the 2013 Lone Star Film Festival Ball, and received the Topaz Award from the Dallas chapter of Women in Film in 2014. Their highest honor. Their highest honor. Through it all, her wit never faded. Her Twitter feed, usually filled with classic one-liners, took on a more sentimental tone on a Monday morning when she posted, "Thank you for your love and friendship for all these years." A simple yet powerful message that struck a chord with her longtime fans. Ruth Buzzy's career may have ended, but her influence is forever. Whether it was her razor-sharp comedic timing, her iconic laugh-in characters, or her warm and generous spirit, she left an indelible mark on entertainment. What did you think of Ruth's unforgettable characters on Laugh-In? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more fascinating stories.